Hello and welcome to EMS Research with Professor Bram, where we talk about the research-related issues that matter to those who work in emergency medical services. Today, we'll be talking about occupational injuries in EMS. Welcome to the EMS Research Vlog and Podcast from the studio here in Houston, Texas. I'm your host, Bram Duffy. I'm a full-time paramedic on the street, like many of you. I also have an appointment as a research fellow with the Institute for Social Innovation at Fielding Graduate University, and I'm an assistant professor of communication at Kennesaw State University. I actually have a research study open now for first responders, so if you don't mind being interviewed by me, then go to my website and check it out, www.professorbram.com. It's professorbram.com. You just click on the current research tab to apply. The other thing to share before we get started, I have written 2 different books on communication. And the most recent book was just released called Hypnotic Communication in Emergency Medical Settings for Life-Saving and Therapeutic Outcomes. You can find a link to the book below. Also, for sure, hang out to the end and I'll tell you more about it. So for today's show, I have Dr. Brian Maguire, who's the senior epidemiologist at a government medical research laboratory. His experience includes being a senior Fulbright scholar, a university professor, research center director, graduate program director, EMS agency president, coordinator of paramedic training in New York City, and a New York City paramedic. He's presented in 12 countries and is one of the most published authors in the world of paramedic safety and in the area of paramedic safety. He has a doctoral degree in public health from George Washington University and a master's in health administration from Central Michigan University. And today he's here to talk to us about 2 of his research articles. So Dr. Maguire, welcome. Good to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, do you have anything to add? I know you're from Connecticut. Is there anything else that you'd like to share for your introduction?
I've been very fortunate to have a really wonderful EMS career, starting off in New York City and then teaching in Washington, D.C., and then spending 7 years in Australia teaching in paramedic programs there. So it's been a wonderful career. And now I'm back in the United States and continuing something I love to do, which is research.
Wow. Where can I ask where you taught in when you were over there in down under?
I taught for Central Queensland University primarily, and that is in a beautiful part of the world, right on the southern tip of the Great Barrier Reef. And my wife and I were very fortunate to enjoy the area and get out scuba diving and hiking, and there's a lot of beautiful places there.
Yeah, I was just wondering where, because I have a lot of different PhD paramedic research contacts that are in Australia. It's an exciting place for that. And so it makes a lot of sense that you were down that area. I'm a super tall person. So because of my height, it prevents me from wanting to be on an aircraft that long. But for sure, that's a real teeming place to be if you're in EMS research right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're doing a lot of great work there.
Wow. Well, so the first article that we selected to talk about that you wrote is called Occupational Injuries and Illnesses Among Paramedic Clinicians. It's an analysis of the U.S. Department of Labor data 2010 to 2020. This was featured in Prehospital and Disaster Medicine. And when I looked at this article, paramedics help people during emergencies, and it's just a job that can be risky. And in the U.S., paramedics respond to 40 million calls every year, and they get hurt on the job more than any other emergency worker, and even more than other kinds of workers. So the study that you did looked at this data of over a 10-year period to find out how many paramedics got hurt, how their risks have changed over time, and how that risk compares to other jobs. Each year, there were many injuries from overexertion, strains, sprains, back injuries, and violence. Women paramedics got hurt 50% more than men. And in 2020, paramedics were more than 4 times likely to get injured than an average worker in the US. And then they were 7 times more likely to hurt their back. They were also 6 times more likely to experience violence at work than an average worker. So understanding these risks is important so we can find ways to keep paramedics safer on the job. This is a lot of stuff that um, is eye-opening and shocking. What motivated you to push into this research field and look at the risks here?
Yeah, it began when I was in New York City. As a New York City paramedic, I saw that a lot of my colleagues were being injured, and I had one particular day where I was the department head of a hospital, and we ran ambulances. We had an ambulances out of the hospital, and one day one of the ambulances was upside down in the middle of the avenue when I got there, and it got me thinking that there's got to be a way to solve this problem. Somebody must have come up with some ways of reducing these risks. And so I was very surprised when I did a literature review to find that there was very, very little in the way of any research on the risks for paramedics. So that got me interested in the topic. And when I was doing my doctoral degree, I did research on occupational risks for EMS workers as my doctoral degree, as my dissertation.
What methodology did you use in this research to figure out these important things?
Yeah, there's a lot of potential ways that that this type of research could be done. In my current position, I am a senior epidemiologist at a large government medical research lab, and in the lab we have all the medical records and all the personnel files, all the operational records for our populations. And so we can match people's particular job duties, their ages, where they're working, with their health outcomes, what kind of injuries they get, what kind of illnesses they experience. There's nothing like that in EMS, or at least nothing that is accessible. Many EMS agencies in the United States keep voluminous records of when people get hurt, but up until recently, much of that was kept in manila folders
Mhm.
and very, very difficult to examine. And even today, agencies that have digitized those records will often have completely different rules for how they digitize those records and what things mean. There's a wrist fracture considered a wrist fracture or an arm fracture or a hand fracture. There's lots of these subtleties that each EMS agency has done in differently from every other EMS agency. So at the moment, doing EMS safety research the way it should be done is difficult to impossible. So what we have as a backup, and is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Now, the Bureau of Labor Statistics is a wonderful organization that has been doing this type of data collection for years. And so we were able to access their data and examine what they have for EMS personnel. So it's not that level of detail that we want to get to for EMS research. It's not the level of detail that we need to have when we go beyond this initial research to look at how we can reduce these risks. But it is sufficient for now to demonstrate that there is a big risk and that this job is much more dangerous than people had thought, and it's much more dangerous than most other occupations in the United States.
Yeah, and when I think about all the different things that go into that, it's I can make assumptions that it's everything from the culture of the organization that you work to the resources that you have. And I myself have been a paramedic for 25 years, and I was talking to my mom about it the other day, and it's just really remarkable that out of that 25-year career, I spent 5 years. Well, I'm still a paramedic, but I spent 5 years of my life limping every day for 5 years because of a back injury.
Right.
And the only way that it got better for me was I had to take time off the truck. There just was no other way. And I got healed up and I'm back on. But gosh, everybody has these it's a big concern. So
Absolutely.
what are some findings that were any particular surprises for you about this?
So the first studies that were done about 20 years ago were the first studies that were ever done to compare EMS personnel to other professionals. And I think everyone was surprised. I was surprised. I think everyone who read them was surprised to see how dangerous the profession is and how much more dangerous it is compared to all these other professions. So that was the biggest surprise, that both the injuries, the type of injuries, and the fact that they are happening among EMS professionals at such a higher rate compared to other professions. That was the big surprise.
How come this big statistic came out about women? Like, why are women facing more injuries at like a 50% higher injury rate?
Right. And that is a mystery.
Wow.
The research has again and again shown that for injuries, women in EMS have a higher injury rate than the men do. Um, what we don't know is how that breaks out by types of injuries. So we know that some of the highest types of injuries for EMS personnel are back injuries,
Hmm.
are transportation related, are violence related injuries. And what we don't know is how that breaks down in a lot of those areas by sex. And so that's what we need to get to that before we can answer a lot of the questions definitively. But when I speak at conferences and talk to people about these findings and ask, what do you think? Um, Many women come up to me and say, for violence, for example, I had a lot of experience stopping violence, at home. My brother's fighting, my friends fighting, and I felt very comfortable just jumping in and stopping it. But maybe that same approach doesn't work as well in an alien environment where you don't know the people who are being violent. So that is a possibility. For the lifting injuries, maybe women have a higher rate of lifting injuries, and maybe that is more about body size than sex. So
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
we were able to break it out, maybe we'd find that smaller, lighter people have higher injuries of lifting than larger, heavier people. So that's a possibility that needs to be addressed before we can look at this question definitively. But
I
at the
know.
moment,
It's
what
like
we know is that this is a big risk for women in our profession.
it's hard to talk about this topic without seeming sexist, right? But just the we know that there are differences between men and women, and maybe cultural, maybe physical, but it's super surprising. And when I think about lifting, what I see is that I see that if my partner doesn't have a lot of body strength, then that person may have a tendency to lift incorrectly, right?
Mhm.
Like maybe shove instead of use
Right.
muscle, or and so there may be some like pieces that have to just do with body mechanics because of the size. I know that I've had some female partners who are very small and they brag about how they can lift a lot. And so maybe they're maybe that person's not lifting correctly to just get the job done. I don't know, but it's really interesting. The other thing that I think about is
Like,
how,
just one other thing on
yeah,
that, about the sex. I think that is certainly a very likely possibility. But we know in other professions that there are differences by sex. I'm a pilot, and research on pilots have demonstrated that men and women who are pilots crash for different reasons.
really,
There's still a lot of question about what the risks are and what are the contributing factors to risks by gender. So there's a lot of questions that that we want to be able to answer.
Yeah. And the other thought I had is that, with so much, um, I don't know how to use the word, machismo, toxic masculinity, some of those things that get built into the culture of the masculine side of EMS might make folks less um, less likely to report an injury, right? I'm not hurt, I'll be okay. Kind of. There's all kinds of like interesting thoughts about how this could come together the way they do, but that's my guess. My guess is that there's a lot of men that don't claim the injury, and that there may be some body mechanic differences. But how do these injury rates compare to other high risk professions? I mean, is this the most dangerous thing I could be doing right now?
It's one of the most dangerous things you can be doing right now, for sure. And we know, for example, it's a lot more dangerous. There's a lot more injuries than other emergency services personnel, certainly a lot more than nurses and physicians. So compared to people that we're working with every day, we tend to have a much higher injury rate.
I just think that sometimes we think that if we can control what's going on around us, that we're safe, and it's just not the case. When I was a paramedic supervisor, I had a crew of mine that was driving on the interstate, and a wheel came off of an 18-wheeler, and the wheel hit their ambulance, went right through the front of their cab. And both folks were injured, but not anything super severe. But it was a big wake-up call to think that you could just be driving along and this big, scary thing just come and clobber your ambulance, and there's
Right.
so many, because I used to think, okay, I used to think traffic could be my most dangerous thing. So I put my traffic vest on, try to pay attention, but it's not just that, it's the traffic around you when you're driving. And in
Right.
EMS, we drive so much that these things can go awry really easily. I had a situation one time where I was um, on a car wreck scene, and I had a state trooper scream at me to move out of the way. And I didn't know, because I was carrying a backboard across the street at the time, but there was a car that was barreling towards me, and so they should
Mhm.
have been going like 20, and they were going 55. And the only reason I survived that's because I dove onto the ground with my chest, kind of like a TV show thing you would see,
Right.
and I'm like, thank God for that state trooper who was watching out for me, because
Right.
I did not see that car coming that fast. And are we even going to say that it's more dangerous than military work? Is that a high risk profession that it's been compared to, I wonder?
Yeah, that's another area that the comparisons can be more challenging. So we don't have those comparisons.
Like, wow. Well, the other research article that you wrote that I wanted to bring out was called a cohort study of occupational fatalities among paramedic clinicians. And this was 2003 through 2020. And this is a study that looked at how many paramedics and EMTs died while working during those years.
Right.
And so that's like a 7-year period. The study found out that that about 11 paramedics or EMTs die each year because of this risk. So most of these deaths happen because of transportation related incidences like car
Right.
crashes. And this study showed that men are 3 times more likely than women to die on the job. Paramedics and EMTs are 8 times more likely to die on the job than other healthcare workers in general. And the study says that we need a better way to help keep track of these deaths so we can figure out how to prevent them. And the goal should be to have no paramedics or EMTs die while doing their jobs.
Absolutely.
And I am really thankful that we're looking at this. And so tell me more about what happened over the study you did.
The big takeaway is that a lot of people are dying on the job. Again, many more than anyone had ever thought before. And the reason it's not as well publicized, for example, as firefighters and police officers, is because there tends to be a lot more of them. And so there's a lot more. And unfortunately for police officers, they do have a higher fatality rate than EMS. Um, so there's a lot of fatalities, and it's a lot more dangerous job than people thought. And what's happening, how people are dying, we have about on average more than one homicide a year. So this is, you think about an EMT or paramedic going in to help someone, and are murdered on the job. And the fact that it's happening every year, more than once a year, is shocking. Um, Transportation, as you said, is another big risk, and we have a lot of EMTs and paramedics dying in ambulance crashes, either going to or coming back, either going to the call or taking the patient from the scene to the hospital, typically, and a lot of people dying on the side of the road. So they're at a crash site, taking care of someone, and another car comes along and strikes them and kills them. So these are big risks that are being faced by people in our profession. And the first step towards mitigating these risks, are recognizing them. And so that's why this paper and the first one that was done, and others that have been done related to this, are so important to inform people in our profession that these are the ways that people are dying, and so that they can have some control over their own destiny, to be able to recognize their risks and to be able to um, be proactive about reducing their risks for themselves.
So this study that you did it also look at medical related deaths, like like if you had a heart attack on the job, was it that, did it include those also?
So the thing about medical that's challenging is when a person gets hit by a vehicle and dies on the scene or soon thereafter, there's a very strong cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
But for a person who gets sick and then dies sometime later, it's more of a challenge to link those. So, for example, we know that many EMS personnel have died since September 11th, but we don't know if any of them are in this data set.
Mm-hmm.
So we have documentation, we have their names, we know who they are, we know when they died, but we don't have a way at the moment to know if they are part of this data set. We also know that COVID has resulted in a lot of fatalities that may have happened quite a while after the initial sickness, and COVID wasn't our first deadly communicable disease. There was a case in the 90s, a young woman in New York City who got stuck with a needle and put in all the paperwork, did everything she was supposed to do. Probably didn't think a lot of it at the time, but made sure all the right paperwork was done, and she contracted AIDS and died from it. So we know, and we don't know if she's in this database. So those are the challenges with the national data, and those are the reasons that we need better data for EMS to get to the next level of being able to more closely identify the risks and to be able to measure, when we do interventions, what kind of outcomes we're having from those interventions.
For the pre-hospital and disaster medicine study about deaths, where did the information get pulled? How did you get that?
The same as for the injury study, the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Awesome. So,
right.
So it sounds like we're able to identify stuff, but really the causality is not as strong, huh?
Exactly. Without the more granular data, it's very difficult to be able to determine what the influences are of different possibilities. So, for example, we know that fatigue could be a big factor in both fatalities and injuries. We know that EMS personnel tend to work multiple jobs and long hours,
Mm-hmm.
and around the clock hours, but without the more specific data, it's tough to make the link between things like fatigue and outcomes like injuries and fatalities.
Can you take a stab at given us some ideas why you think that men had a higher fatality rate than women?
I think there's a lot of sex-related differences in many occupations. Um, and there's a lot of unanswered questions about how those individual components do influence outcomes. So it's possible that women are more careful. Maybe they don't drive as fast. Um, Maybe they're not as likely to go into dangerous scenes when they might get shot.
Mhm.
We don't know. Or maybe the men are protecting their patient or their partners. We don't know a lot of the reasons that there are these sex differences, but the fact that there are sex differences, both for the injuries and for the fatalities, indicates that any intervention we come up with has to have at least some sex specific component to it, because if they um, are facing these risks for different reasons, any intervention needs to address those reasons.
Mhm.
The other thing that sex specific differences tells us is that these incidents are not random. If they were random, they'd be happening to everybody at the same time, but they're not random. And so if they're not random, they may be predictable. And if they're predictable, they may be preventable. That's where we want to be able to go.
One of the thoughts that I've had for a long time is about the correlation between injury and death with EMS workers and body weight. And, the reason I say that is because we all understand that if you have a healthy body weight, it means a lot of things. You can move your body better. You can, you know, and then the medical concerns that go with that are less extreme, right? When we think about coronary artery disease and those kinds of things. So, you know, in the back of my mind for a lot of years, I've had in my mind that, gosh, wouldn't it be a good thing if we wrote a white paper about physical fitness related to EMS? Because I know that, the weight requirements for helicopters are definitely a consideration. But when we talk about the lifting and the moving and the stress and the things that the body has to go through, I just think that that the overall health, of the person as looked at by body mass index or the weight is an important thing. And I'm not being mean or anything. I'm being serious, And so I just wanted to see what your thoughts about that were, because it's really hard, like you said, to correlate things because it's a medical component that doesn't happen immediate, right? And so, but at the same time, I think it's something that is worth looking at.
I completely agree. For most of my time as a paramedic, I was a marathon runner and a taekwondo instructor.
Wow.
And I
Right.
don't think that people need to be marathon runners or taekwondo instructors or black belts in this profession. But I think that people do need to recognize that their health will have an impact on their outcomes. And it is important to be healthy. Um, we know that this is a profession where people often work very long hours, work multiple jobs. People have difficult times sometimes fitting in exercise. But I think one of the things that we should, as a profession, embrace is the value and importance of exercise and keeping fit, and being taking control for our own safety. So I think not only the fitness, but things like self-defense. I don't think you need to be a black belt, but I do think that it's important for us to recognize that the reality is that paramedics are getting killed and paramedics are getting injured every year at a much higher rate than people ever imagined. And we need to do something about that, both from a professional level, from an organizational level, but we also need to do something on an individual level, that we need to recognize that we have a responsibility for our health also. And yes, we should work with management because there is a joint responsibility there, that we need to investigate and evaluate different types of procedures, organizational changes that may reduce these risks. But we have to, ourselves, take it upon ourselves to do what we can to reduce our risks. And that means one thing, being healthy is very important. And another thing, being able to protect ourselves and our partners is very important.
Yeah, when I started at EMS, I was super young, and so I came into the field like right at 18, and I had at that point in my life had been a vegetarian for about 2.5 years, and what I quickly realized on the ambulance was that I just wasn't going to get to eat anything at all unless I ate bad stuff, and so it converted me from being a vegetarian. It hurt my cholesterol, and
Right.
and now, like in my 40s, I'm like very cognizant of it, and I have to pay attention all the time. One of the things that I appreciate is that, especially with these ambulance companies that have 24-hour shifts, which is a standard, that when possible they allow exercise time. I've worked for a couple of different agencies, and the one I work for now also, if I have time, we do workouts, and so it's really helpful if you have a regular partner and that partner is also interested in that fitness thing. But that's one thing that's really easy for agencies to do, that to help out, because it shows that there's a priority there.
I think that the responsibility that we talked about, that is a big factor here. I think organizations can help with that in terms of organizational encouragement for people to be fit. And if that means some exercise time, I think that's a good idea. I think fatigue is another factor that is part of this issue too. And I think the shifts, play into this. If we now know, research has demonstrated that if you're awake for 21 hours, you are more impaired than if you have a blood alcohol level that is legally intoxicated. So we know that those two things absolutely go together. So we shouldn't have long shifts, and we have to individually and organizationally recognize that this is a big risk. So I think that's another area that we can jointly take control, that we have to recognize that one of the things that goes into being fit is sleep. And if we're having people work long shifts, multiple shifts, that's going to contribute to risks. And there was a case not that long ago. It wasn't an EMS case, but it was a hospital where the resident had gone home after a very long shift and crashed and injured someone horribly. And the hospital was sued by the parents, saying, you have at least as much responsibility as a bartender. You should have known that this person should not be out on the street driving a car. Mm-hmm. And I think EMS agencies are facing that risk a lot more than they realize, that if their personnel on a long shift crashes the ambulance, or even after they get off duty and are driving home and they crash and injure someone, that the EMS agency may have liability here. So it is in all our best interests. We don't want paramedics. No paramedic wants to crash into somebody going home or on duty. No agency wants that to happen to their personnel. So we have a shared interest in addressing this problem. And this problem could be the core of a lot of these other issues that we talked about. That fatigue can be a part of high injury rates, high illness rates, high fatality rates, poor health. And so we need, as a profession, to address this, to say, we're going to take this on as our joint responsibility to improve the health of our workforce, reducing fatigue in our workforce, and reducing risks, and making sure our workforce, our professionals, people who are out there helping people every day, we're going to make it our responsibility jointly to be able to create as healthy a workforce as possible.
Yeah, I know some environments where, like in EMS or in fire, I know some environments where they do 48-hour shifts. So they're there
Right.
for that long period of time. And I think about it, I try to be realistic about it and think, gosh, okay, if they're really, really not that busy, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's not, but it's hard to predict. And in those cases where we are able to predict, I think that people still, go for those long shifts. And from the perspective of the paramedic, I think a lot of times it's that folks are just really trying to make money for their family, and so
Absolutely.
as an industry, we don't pay a whole heck of a lot. And so it's like, how can I get in more hours so that I can, make that extra money? I have a friend who is has really changed his financial position this month because he's working every single day this month except 3. And it's because he's trying to do great stuff for his family and his kids for
Right.
Christmas. But God, I
Sure.
worry about him all the time.
Yes.
And I know for sure his family does not even understand the incredible risk that, that they're going under. And so the answer is, in my mind, is really the agencies need to be making these decisions, because if it's up to the EMS workers, we're going to work nonstop as much as we can to make that money. And so I think that we have to raise the wages to make up for that, because people will work nonstop. And I know that you've seen it where someone's working a private ambulance job for 24 hours and then they could start their 911 job right after that. And it's a scary thing, especially with what can happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is a big issue in the United States. In other countries, paramedics are often paid more than firefighters, more than police officers, more than nurses, because they're recognized for the value that they provide to society. In the United States, we have this antiquated system, and unfortunately, it's had a real impact on the salaries that are being paid to our EMS professionals. And that is a big part of the core problem why EMS professionals are working as much as they are.
Yeah. And then I think that it's obvious to see that one of the factors in that is that it's a mix of private ambulance plus government supported ambulance. And so when we have a private entity that is in charge of it, there's no choice but to look at the financial aspects. And if we have to prioritize the finance, then maybe we, can end up putting people more at risk. So
Mhm.
I think that it's wild that we look at EMS as an industry that needs to make money instead of looking at it as a public service. But
Right.
that's where we are, and it can dramatically change. That I'm lucky in my environment right now where I can usually ask for a safety nap if I am just too exhausted, and usually that's only like a 2-hour nap that I'm allowed. But my gosh, that could save my life. And other people in other environments don't get that, especially if they're in a more rural environment. And it's dangerous. I'm glad that we could talk about this and shed
Mhm.
more lights on these things, because um, I think that we know a lot of the answers, and it's system related. So the more research that comes out, the more evidence that we have to show of what's the best way, what's the right way.
Right. And that research is critical. And so I think one of the things that we can do as a profession is encourage that research and encourage our agencies to collect the data in ways that are usable, to make those data available for researchers, and to work together with agencies to say, what can we do to make this job as safe as possible?
Yeah, for real. Well, thank you for being here today to talk about this. Is there anything else that you want to kick in for the audience?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate to to have been to a lot of other countries and worked with the EMS agencies in those countries. And one of the things that is really reassuring to me is that in many of these countries, EMS is a very valued profession. They've been recognized as very valued. Their paramedics are paid more than many other similar professions, and I think there it's not a pipe dream to say that this could happen. And I think it's important for us to have that goal in mind, that that we should be aiming towards a place of where paramedics are paid what they should be paid. Now, part of that in most of those countries, essentially all the countries where they're paid that well, paramedics have college degrees. And I think that's one of the other things that go hand in hand, that we have to encourage our profession to embrace education and to because those things go together. Mayors and governors have a tough time justifying big salaries for high school graduates, but and especially if you know, if we thought about nurses were high school graduates, they probably wouldn't be paid nearly as well as they are. But because they're college graduates, that makes a big difference. And it's made a big difference in other countries. And I think it'll make a big difference here, that those things go hand in hand, that we should be paid more. We should be treated as a profession more. You know, in other countries, when you drive your ambulance back at the end of the shift, you drop the keys off. And there's a whole team of people at the station who are not paramedics and EMTs who clean the ambulance and restock it and make sure it's ready for the next shift. So it's kind of like dropping off a rent-a-car, and when you go and pick up a rent-a-car, you know it's gassed up and clean and ready to go. And that's what a lot of other agencies in other countries, that's what they do. The paramedics aren't mopping out the back of the ambulance at the end of every shift. So I think these are things that we can aspire to for our profession, that we want this profession to be a recognized, respected profession where the people are paid appropriately and where the working conditions are safe.
Yeah, you know, I talked to a lot of paramedics who are sort of against additional education, and I think that some of it is just they don't know what they can get out of it, right? Because as a paramedic, we think, oh, well, I have my ACLS and PALS, and I know what to do, and like, how is that going to make me a better provider? What is that going to do for me? I already know what to do, and there's so many small nuances, because and this conversation has really pushed me in the past to look into these paramedicine programs. That what are they doing at a bachelor's level that could be so good? And the answer is that they're getting actual medical training, right? I mean, so there's additional learning about medicine, and also commonly about research. And so learning about the medicine and the research elements are what we can see as things that can propel the field forward and give us what we want.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's just a couple of the components. So, you know, we know that broad education in college helps people be better thinkers. We also know that there's other opportunities there. So, for example, my wife runs a program that has all the nursing students, with all the pharmacy students, with all the medical students, with all the allied health students, all participating together in projects looking at community health.
Oh,
There are
yeah.
no paramedics there because there are no paramedics going for bachelor's degrees. So that's another way that all those professions are not only learning about these issues from their own professional perspective, they're learning it from the perspective of other professions. And each of those students are helping their other students learn about their profession. Nobody's doing that for EMS. So all these people graduate, they don't know what EMS is. All these, you know, pharmacists and all these people, they don't know what EMS is because they never had anybody like that in school. So there's a tremendous amount of synergy that takes place in the university. And so they're learning they will learn to be better paramedics, but they'll also have a lot of benefits beyond that. And I'm not saying that every paramedic has to be forced to go back to school. I'm not advocating that at all. What I am saying is that we as a profession should recognize the value of education and have a goal in mind that at some point in the future that everyone coming into the profession will have an academic background, because that is the way to make better patient care and to improve the profession.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we said a lot today. Thank you so much for being here.
A pleasure.
Dr. Maguire, all the way from Connecticut, made a big difference with us today. And so I'm going to put up your contact information so that folks can reach out to you and also check out your research stuff.
Fantastic.
I want to also invite you to check out my latest book I co-authored with Four Arrows, who has 2 doctorates and is an expert on indigenous scholarship and hypnosis. So I just want to invite you to check it out, because we introduce a method for communicating with patients on the scene of an emergency that takes advantage of some of the properties found in hypnosis. This book works to change the way we approach and interact with any kind of emergency patient in acute distress, because it's going to help you be a better practitioner and use communication as a healing tool. Right now, there's just not a lot of training in how to talk to your patient. And if you've been stuck with a patient for any period of time and you need to have a conversation, it's awesome to be able to have a healing conversation. This book is called Hypnotic Communication in Emergency Medical Settings for Life-Saving and Therapeutic Outcomes. You can follow the link below to find it, or you can find it literally almost anywhere you type in the name or my name. I had a friend that mailed me a book and wanted an autograph. Don't mail me a bunch of books. Just let me know that you want an autograph for the book, and I'll be happy to send you over a sticker. I have some stickers made that are pretty awesome that I'll send you that you could put in the cover.
Hi, I'm Will Chaplot from the International Prehospital and Medicine Institute. You might know about us because of the literature reviews that we post every month free for your review on our website at iphmi.com, and also published through GEMS Online magazine every month. We've been doing them for 5 years, so now we've accumulated over 240 literature reviews over the past 5 years. And we've gotten feedback from our audience that said they'd like to have these things as desk references, so they'd had a rapid reference. Well, we've done it. And there are now 5 volumes of these books, one for each year that we've been publishing them. This is the latest version, volume 5. And as I said, in each of these, there's at least 48 literature reviews. They're all cataloged in the beginning of the book, so you can see what the topic area is, what pages those reviews are on, and how you can find them quickly. And again, these are a great reference, whether you're putting a lecture together, working on a paper, studying, whatever it is. This gives you the depth of field of the science that dictates what we do in the field, or what we should be doing in the field, or why we've changed the way we do things in the field. In any event, as with all of our publications, we've priced these because we want you to be able to have this book. It's only $4.99 in the hard copy here, and all 5 of them are available at that price. But you can also get them as ebooks, and they're available as ebooks from Amazon, from Apple, from Barnes & Noble, wherever you get your ebooks for the price of $2.99. So again, we don't do this with an aim towards getting wealthy. We do these because we want you guys to be able to have these materials, relevant information, affordable information, and an access so you can get to it. So you want the hard copies, go on Amazon, $4.99. Go to your ebook store and you get it for $2.99. If you're in the business, this is the kind of material you want to have around to settle those firehouse arguments or to help you put your materials together. Thanks again. See you all soon. Thanks.
The other thing before we close that I want to share is that I'm doing a research project related to first responders who live in the United States. And I could really use your help if you don't mind being interviewed over a video call. So go to my website, fill out the form that's at professorbram.com, professorbram.com. And thank you again for listening. I look forward to sharing more insights with you in this next episode. If you enjoy EMS research, please tell your friends, like, share, and subscribe to help others get the message. And then stay tuned for the credits at the end so you can see the research articles that we talked about in today's episode.